Prologue. Why is the United States government attacking the people of the United States? Why is the American government attacking the American people? And where did our tax money go? People call me Waffles. I prefer to be called Waffles anyway. I am a whistleblower that has been witnessing what appears to be a crime spree taking place through our government, and I feel I need to share the information I have collected. I am concerned I may be a victim of a crime, and I am also concerned that a lot of other people are too. I hope that the information in this writing may help others understand some of the things they have experienced in the past several years. I also hope that the information in this writing will also assist with holding the people who have been doing cruel things to the people of the United States accountable. As I am writing this introduction, today is January 22nd, 2025. As a nation, we witnessed a Nazi salute behind the presidential podium at the presidential inauguration of Donald J. Trump only 2 days ago. Due to the fact that something like this has just happened in such a way, I feel it is imperative to quickly throw together any information I have been working on in this writing due to an increasing risk to public safety that has been taking place through our political offices. There has been a lot of chaos that the American people have been forced to tolerate for far too long, which has been going unchecked, and public safety is a great concern to me at this time. My capacity for tolerance is now gone since I have witnessed a Nazi salute behind the presidential podium during our inauguration from a president who literally just told the nation during the same inauguration that he stole the election in his pre-inauguration rally. Shit has gotten out of control. I have data I have been holding on to that I think the public needs to be aware of. I also believe that my civil rights are being violated by the United States government. I am the angriest I have ever been in my entire life. There is a lot of complex stuff involved with all of the things that have been happening with the misbehaviors of our governmental body. I have been trying hard to get all the data collected on why it is that their behaviors are detrimental. To prove an irrefutable point. Due to the fact that we have a president who just admitted to election fraud on live television before his inauguration, who has also been threatening our foreign allies, I believe it is very important to just take what I have and publish it. I am unsure right now whether or not I will be coming back later to publish revisions or additional sections to create a finished work out of this text I have been writing. I have gone through a lot psychologically and emotionally as a result of being stolen from through political violence from our governmental body, and have had to force myself to come to acceptance of the reality of what it is that I have been dealing with. I have also had to take into consideration the fact that I have to deal with the consequences of the misdeeds of others. I have had to look at myself and come to acceptance with myself in a way to be able to push myself forward to face the public and be comfortable enough to share my story. This has been a very hard journey for me. I would not have been writing this book if it were not for the fact that criminal activity has been taking place and our governmental body is failing at doing anything about it. I am realizing at this point, now that there has, in American history, been a man standing behind the presidential podium saluting the Nazi regime in front of the world, that I am incapable of handling the problems that caused this book to exist on my own. I have here data which impacts the entire nation that I need to share with everyone for the well-being of my own home nation. My responsibility is not only to protect myself but others. I may not have all of the answers, but I know I have some solutions and an understanding on a deeper level, because I have been trying to find ways to hold the people who have been doing harm in my life accountable for damages done to me. Unfortunately, however, I just witnessed a Nazi salute behind the presidential podium, and I know I can't fix this alone, so I am then going to release this information to the public so we can work together to find solutions. I am going to do the best I can to try and put the information I already have together in a way that makes sense. For me, there is already 600 pages of stuff. I feel like it is starting to turn into political science, and it is getting way too complicated. Since the crime spree won't stop and the situation continues to get worse, I am going to just slam down what I have and clean it up a bit to make it readable. The destruction of civilized society in the United States needs to stop. I am fed up and I know I am not the only one getting very angry at the constant disruptions to normality in life. I believe, at the end of the day, we are witnessing the largest financial crime in world history and it needs to be put to an end. This cannot go on forever. Copyright 2025 by Rachel Neff or Waffles Mcgrawl. All rights reserved. This publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in digital format or by print, excluding photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher. I grant permission for redistribution of this work but do not grant permission for alteration or manipulation of the contents within. You may not alter or modify this work. You are granted permission to redistribute for non-commercial use only. You may not sell or seek to profit from any portion of this work without written authorization. This is a work of non-fiction. The events and people described in this book are real. Some names have been changed for privacy. Cover design by Rachel Neff or Waffles Mcgrawl. Interior design by Rachel Neff or Waffles Mcgrawl. ISBN, none, self-published, printed in digital format. First edition, May 17, 2025. Published by Rachel Neff or Waffles Mcgrawl. Colorado. Contents. 1. Pandemic Backlog Report, page 5, 2. My Life History, Short Autobiography, page 24, 3. Case Information, Defend Justice, Post-Pandemic Chain of Events, page 46, I. The Impact This Is Having on Me, page 46, 2. Beginning Observation of Strange Activity at the Colorado Department of Labor, page 47, 3. 4. Gender Discrimination and Job Loss, A Tale of Dumbass, page 63, v. The Battle with the Government Continues, page 81, 6. Corrupt Corporate Pizza Bar, page 99, 7. More Tangent, page 111, 8. Another Bad Landscaping Job, page 116, 9. Accumulated Losses, page 119, X Summary, page 127, 11. Resources, page 223. Pandemic Backlog Report. To whom it may concern. I write to you declaring the United States federal government has engaged in a tort of incomprehensible magnitude. If you feel this letter is too long to read, consider using a text-to-speech software. I will be unwavering in trying to get this resolved because I see the overall situation as a national security threat. That means, if I need to be incredibly loud and in the public eye to see to it that this is dealt with, I will do so with no regard for my personal safety. This letter has been sent to government agencies, non-profit organizations, scholars, media outlets, law firms, and public officials. We need to acknowledge the misappropriation of American tax dollars and lack of government accountability to the people. I am, in this letter, openly accusing several branches of the United States federal government of the tort of disparate impact in failing to address pandemic provisions for governmental operations and therefore depriving millions of American citizens of the aid they need from Social Security assistance to enforcement of labor laws, ECT. I have been fighting to be heard on this matter and am having a very difficult time being heard and understood. I think this is a very large problem that is in front of a lot of people, but people are failing to acknowledge it and partially due to a lack of knowing its cause. I believe the overall causation of the problem I am writing you to address is a lack of oversight and accountability. I have been working to collect information on this in order to write more effectively, but I think a lot of the data I need is not being made publicly available. However, I do have some statistics to speak to the matter. I feel this has incredible implications for the state of civil liberties in the United States, and a failure to act will have dire consequences. I view complacency on this issue as the erasure of decades of Americans fighting for freedom. Considering the violent history of the United States, this, too, is unacceptable. In having a government that fails to enforce the laws, we have no government. This is what we are facing. I feel the lack of patrolling police force that I am witnessing in my area is nothing more than a physical representation of that which I am able to clearly see every time I leave the house. I am horrified as to what this may mean for the rights of minorities and women, and therefore my rights. I am going to open up with some explanation as to my case scenario and afterwards provide statistics and background on my cause for concern regarding this being a civil rights matter. I am a 36-year-old female. I have been working in the trades since 2009, primarily in construction and landscaping. I had no idea when I entered into this type of work that I was on the frontier of women breaking into this industry. Throughout my career, I have been met with significant adversity and a lot of mistreatment and have lost several jobs as a result. I had to learn the hard way where we are at in the historical timeline and realize that women are not treated equally, and that I have found myself in a precarious situation trying to make a living. Throughout the years, I have sought out help quite a bit and have not received any respect or assistance in trying to figure out how to deal with these men hazing me out of my jobs. There is all this hype about women in the trades, but nobody is helping these women navigate this moment. I tried working for the union and was treated worse there than under terms of conventional employment. In attempting to reach out to organizations that claim to assist women in the trades, I was not met with even so much as a single reply. I am now almost 40 and am finding that it is not realistic to believe that I will ever be granted the right or ability to have my own home. I was severely abused as a child and do not have family to turn to. I started doing this kind of work because I was living in my car during the 2008 recession for a period of 2 years, and this is the work that was available at the time. Setting aside the appalling amount of abuse and mistreatment I have experienced throughout my life, where I find myself now has led to frequent thoughts of suicide. I have been shut in this bedroom for almost a full year now. I am lucky I even have a roof over my head. There are a lot of people being affected by the lack of government oversight that has caused me to be in such a dire situation. I know I'm not the only one suffering to an extreme because of this. I was initially writing all of this due to a lack of ability to find a lawyer. What is now an introduction to a report on denial of justice and blatant theft within our agencies was initially a letter to try and get a lawyer. Lawyers always want people to go into detail about what happened to even get the opportunity to speak with a lawyer. I have filed multiple cases and am just unable to get assistance. I know I am not the only one having these problems though, because of what is in this report. In my inability to get assistance and the frustration of getting financially robbed along with the denial of justice, I have been trying to find answers and trying to figure out how to get justice. I have been writing extensively, and the issue now seems to be snowballing into a giant ugly monster the whole nation needs to deal with. I am a former government employee who witnessed negligence during the pandemic. That means I am a whistleblower if I am then providing this information to the public for means of public safety. I have also blown the whistle on what appears to be a likely case of international fraud being conducted in the United States. I was hoping things were going to calm down enough for me to be able to pursue my own case and do what I can to try and assist the public in the middle of all of this, but over the past several months I have watched as corruption has become a worsening situation for the American people, and we all are being impacted. I was attempting to build a case, but this cannot continue to wait. I will do the best. Apologize for the incompleteness and lack of structure of this writing. far as what has transpired this past few years, it starts with me fleeing an abusive living situation and moving in with my uncle. Shortly after I moved in, I broke my foot on November 5, 2022. I filed for unemployment benefits because I broke my foot and was resultantly much less able to work. I live in Colorado. I was repeatedly told on the phone by representatives at the Department of Labor that I was unable to receive my benefits due to the backlog created by the pandemic and had ongoing issues with attempting to claim unemployment. This has been an ongoing problem for people in the state of Colorado. KRDO, a subsidiary of ABC News, states the following in an article that was published on August 9, 2023. According to federal data from February, Colorado is the slowest state in the country. Approving 36% of unemployment claims within 3 weeks, which is the threshold the U.S. Department of Labor classifies as timely. Ritzdorf, 2023. With that being said, I will let you know that in 2021 I spent 6 months working for the Department of Labor as a subcontractor through an employment agency handling incoming calls from claimants struggling to receive their unemployment. Our contract was severed as a result of less incoming calls, and I was laid off. It was pretty upsetting to be handling these calls, hearing what people were going through and having to refuse assistance to people who qualified for and needed the help. It is now 2024, and I am sad to say that in my interaction with the Colorado Department of Labor, it appears little has changed since then. This is quite alarming to me. I have lived a life of severe adversity, which we will address later in this letter. As a result of how my life has panned out, I have not been able to maintain any savings in my bank accounts and desperately needed the aid I qualified for and did not receive in a timely manner. It took me somewhere around 2 to 3 months to find a job on the internet where I could safely work from home with a broken foot. During this time, I had no source of income. I was incredibly frivolous in attempting to find a job, submitting literally hundreds of applications online a day. Eventually, I got hired by a high-turnover call center in another state called StarTech. I was hired on for a team of new staff to handle a new client obtained by StarTech. The client's company name is Altus or Optimum U.S.A. In attempting to resolve customer complaints regarding abnormal financial activity, I was fired. I have filed complaints to 2 state attorney generals as well as the SEC regarding this. In July, the co-founder of this company was arrested in Portugal and an international investigation has started. Goncalves, 2023. This company has been the subject of an international fraud investigation. However, the United States has failed to investigate this company. It has been investigated in foreign nations but not within the United States. I do not know whether or not the United States government is working on investigating this. After being fired for this job for calling out suspicious financial activity, I started a landscaping job at a local business. I was hired for the position of enhancements foreman. I was given a supervisory position over a young man who repeatedly told me, "I don't think women can do this kind of work." There was a lot of problems at this job, and going into detail on this matter is not time efficient, so I will spare the details. I was not given the support I needed for the position I was in and was harassed and fired with no explanation. I filed a complaint with the EEOC regarding this matter. Immediately after being fired from my landscaping job, I started attending college. I was previously enrolled and was planning not to attend school during the summer in favor of my job. Since I had been initially hired for a supervisory position, I spoke with management and was told it would be best if I did not attend classes this semester because of the fluctuations that can happen to work schedules during the summer season. The situation I faced losing this job sent me into a panic, so I went to my classes as a reaction to trauma. The landscaping industry hires in early spring, and when they terminated me, there were no jobs available, forcing me into this situation. I then took a massive pay cut and was working under the table for $15 an hour landscaping for a person I found on the internet who was not engaging in safe practices. I was not making enough money to stay committed to the 2-hour drive I had to make to get to this job. I continued to attempt to collect unemployment while reporting my earnings. During this time to supplement my income, and then when no longer being at work was still unable to collect. I had found an online group of people who were trying to figure out what is going on with our unemployment division, and we found that we could receive our benefits if we call the state governor. After months of dealing with this, I am now directing people in my state to contact the Office of Inspector General. My unemployment benefits have been turned on and off and on and off throughout this whole debacle. One of my previous employers lied about the reason for termination at a previous job I had for a temporary agency, and I had to appeal. This was very time-consuming and cost me money that I do not have. I had to spend over $100 to have subpoenas delivered overnight mail requiring a signature. I also had to drive and hand-deliver the subpoenas. My benefits were turned on and then immediately turned back off, claiming an overpayment which I have no financial means to pay back. The Colorado Department of Labor now says I owe them money. This has prevented me from collecting benefits further. In attempting to contact the Department of Labor's Unemployment Division, I was told to call the hotline, which doesn't even connect to a real person in any way. After doing extensive research, I now believe it is very likely that money that is meant for our federal agencies is being stolen from persons directly in our political offices. I will elaborate on this more as we get further into this piece of writing. I know that the Department of Labor's Unemployment Division is disorganized and not communicating internally. I used to work there. It has been 4 years now since the pandemic started, and nothing has changed in how this division is conducting itself. People in my state are still trying to figure out what is going on with all of this, and a handful of people have been contacting the news to get their unemployment. I feel there is a need to watch the news on this matter, and the things I have seen taking place in regards to this is quite concerning to me. On November 30th of 2023, 9 News published an article titled "Woman Who Spent 11 Days on Hold Finally Gets Unemployment Benefits Totaling About $10,000, Sullivan, 2023. I think the title of this article speaks for itself and only serves as a small example of what has been taking place. This problem is going on across the United States, not just in Colorado. The effect this is having on society is people having to file for bankruptcy and losing their homes. There are a lot of reasons why this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed, and sadly the unemployment programs are not the only governmental services having this type of problem. I feel like I have stumbled across a problem that a lot of people are not necessarily aware of, and if I need to make them aware of it, I will. We have a government that at the federal level has been failing to enforce the laws of this nation as a whole. I was very frustrated trying to get answers as to why, for years out from when the pandemic started, nothing has changed at the Colorado Department of Labor. I found it very strange that the people of Colorado have to call the state governor to get unemployment. In my employment as a telework employee at the Department of Labor's Unemployment Division here in Colorado, I feel I witnessed gross negligence in how claimants were handled. Therefore, I feel I have good enough reason to believe that what has been taking place with the dismantling of the American government that I am witnessing is in some way directly related to what is going on with the telework practices of the federal agencies, and that this report provides a somewhat accurate depiction of the scale of the problem we are dealing with across the nation. On November 29, 2023, the House Oversight Committee held a hearing on the telework policies of government agencies. Forbes Breaking News, 2023. After watching this and knowing what I experienced working for the Department of Labor and including the information I've been looking at over the past year with the severity of my personal situation, there are two things I would really like to know. When I started this research, I wanted to know who it is that is making the decisions as to how these departments are managing adaptation. In the world of business, people are always looking for ways to make things more effective and efficient. I would assume each of these governmental agencies should have someone who is in charge of this aspect of how these divisions are run. We should not be in a place where in 2024 now we have seen little to no improvement in how these agencies are being run since the pandemic started. The fact that this is what is going on is refutably putting our federal government in violation of the law. After spending nearly 2 years now knowing the state of the backlogs, seeing nothing getting done, realizing it is a national security threat and doing extensive research to find solutions, I feel the United States Congress bears the most responsibility for the suffering Americans have been experiencing in the past several years. There are regulatory requirements for timely response that these government agencies are required to follow that for the last 4 years now they simply have not been following. This is unacceptable and cannot continue. It is American citizens who are paying the price for the misappropriation of tax dollars and lack of professional behavior of our political offices. The various reasons that cause people to attempt to claim public benefits, more often than not comes down to the fact that they need those funds to survive. Our federal agencies are meant to provide people with stability and security that is necessary for a functioning society in today's modern world. These programs are meant to thwart emergency and uphold the law. There are all sorts of situations where people may need to utilize these benefits, such as situations of losing employment during an economic downturn or having a temporary injury. These programs have been under attack recently, and I believe it is because there are individuals in our governmental body who have been engaging in crimes who may be found if we were to look into what has been taking place through our agencies. Our public officials need to stop and take a moment to look at the bleak future they are painting for the citizens of this country. Since the pandemic started, there are several branches of government that have been failing to serve the public. This needs to be addressed. Their failure to serve is creating a very serious situation that in my eyes is, in itself, the systematic dismantling of the United States government and dismantling of our freedom and security as citizens. Our federal government needs to see to it that the systematic effects of problems resulting from the pandemic are addressed and resolved promptly. It is now 2024, and allowing our government and thus our country to remain in a state of chaos and disorder simply cannot and should not be allowed to continue. We need to address the serious load of backlogs in our governmental departments as well as any other issues taking place that are preventing proper governmental operations. The divisions of government we currently have that are being hampered down by severe backlogs include but are not limited to the following: the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, the EEOC. Let's take a moment to now address the effect this is having on society. Backlog Data Report. The backlogs involve budgets and a lack of staffing. Inflation has affected the cost of operations and state of the backlogs at various federal agencies. Department of Veterans Affairs, VA. 250,000 backlogged cases as of 2022, Gonzalez and Harris, 2022, more than 300,000 as of October 10, 2023, Spanberger, 2023. According to military.com, the Department of Veterans Affairs anticipates that its claims backlog, defined as those older than 125 days, will grow potentially up to 400,000 in the next year, largely the result of the PACT Act. Kime, 2023. While conducting research, I found an article from 13 News Now titled "VA Facing Big Backlog of Benefits Claims," says it could take 2 years to catch up that was published on June 12, 2023. Department of Justice. Criminal Justiciary Harris County, Texas, as of April 13, 2023, sits at an average of 114,000 in backlog sessions. 2023, San Francisco, California, as of August 09th, 2023, San Francisco has more than 1,100 cases past statutory time limits, and 115 of those defendants are languishing in jail without a conviction. Sturm, 2023, the backlog. It is unclear how many criminal cases were left unresolved in San Francisco Superior Court last year. The court provided data for the California Judicial Council's 2023 Court Statistics Report stating that 35,265 criminal cases were filed, 3,086 felonies, 2,179 misdemeanors, and the rest mainly traffic-related infractions. It showed that civil filings totaled 12,004 cases with 10,433 resolved. But San Francisco was one of 10 counties that did not disclose the outcomes of criminal cases. The court provided data for the California Judicial Council's 2023 court statistics report stating that 35,265 criminal cases were filed, 3,086 felonies, 2,179 misdemeanors, and the rest mainly traffic-related infractions. It showed that civil filings totaled 12,004 cases with 10,433 resolved. But San Francisco was one of 10 counties that did not disclose the outcomes of criminal cases. Sturm, 2023, State of Virginia, VCU-CNS, 2023, State of New York, Lucas, 2023. Immigration backlogs. There are currently more than 2 million cases pending in U.S. immigration courts. The United States Government Accountability Office states that this is a backlog which has more than tripled since 2017, U.S. Government Accountability Office, 2023. These cases are under the oversight of the Department of Justice. There are also backlogs relating to immigration at the United States Department of Labor of significant magnitude. The most recent information I can find regarding Department of Labor statistics on backlogs states there was a 114% increase in backlogs in the fourth quarter of 2022 from where the backlogs were at in 2020. Craybaum, 2023. According to Bloomberg Law, the Office of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services had a backlog of almost 9 million pending applications as of the summer of 2023. Lopez Medina, 2023. The wait to get a visa is up to 10 years for some people as a result of these backlogs. The states with the largest immigration court backlogs, according to Track. 1. Florida, 454,434. 2. Texas, 426,9013. California, 327,7434. New York, 322,0215. Illinois, 192,0446. New Jersey, 176,1047. Massachusetts, 144,7218. North Carolina, 119,0259. Georgia, 117,86110. Tennessee, 111,894 inch, Davis Jr., 2024. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission backlogs. The total number of cases in EEOC's charge backlog rose from 42,811 to 51,399 pending charges between fiscal 2021 and 2022. Friedman, 2023. Social Security Administration backlogs. According to the AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees, the state of the backlogs as of October 23, 2023 is as follows. Since 2018, initial disability claims processing time has more than doubled. Processing went from 3.4 months in 2018 to 7.2 months as of July 2023. Since 2018, disability reconsideration processing time has increased by 78%. In FY 2018, it took on average 3.4 months compared to 6 months in FY 2022. Since 2019, average wait times for calls to be answered on the 800 number have increased by 115%. They went from 20 minutes on average in FY 2019 to now 43 minutes in June 2023. There are now 4.2 million backlogged items pending at the payment centers. In FY 2022, it took 6 months on average for SSA and State Disability Determination Services, DDS, to process disability reconsideration requests. There are over 1 million claims pending at the state-run Disability Determination Services. SSA anticipates a 15.5-month wait time for a disability hearing for the 2023 fiscal year after an average wait time of 11 months in 2022 inch AFGE 2023. Securities and Exchange Commission backlogs. I was unable to obtain clear information regarding the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, state of backlogs, but found some journal reading published by accountants which had complex mathematics but also mentioned whistleblowers within the SEC who wished to remain unnamed. It exemplifies a trend that has been taking place with our agencies discarding cases as a result of overflow that has been caused by inappropriate budgets. This paper states that upon investigation that some aspects of the SEC appear to be operating functionally, but it looks like larger cases that involve more investigation are not getting addressed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. I have included some quotation from this paper titled "Wearing Out the Watchdog," which I find to be significant. According to a journal article from the Accounting Review titled "The Impact of SEC Case Backlog on the Formal Investigation Process," the SEC not investigating cases with large losses at least partially because those cases take longer. In terms of economic significance, the coefficient estimate on large losses indicates that these investigations take 239 days longer to close, or approximately 27.3% longer, compared to restatements that result in lower losses for shareholders. Bonsall et al., 2024. This means that larger cases are not getting investigated because of a lack of budgetary resources to function. This article includes information provided by whistleblowers from within the SEC as well as mathematical data as to what has been taking place at this agency. This is a reoccurring trend at our agencies which I am seeking to address, and we will go into further detail about this later. Our federal agencies have been dismissing cases without cause due to not having the funds needed to be able to pursue these cases. The impacts of this are discussed on page 25 of that article. I will also be addressing the impacts of what I am seeing in researching the issue of the backlogs in a separate segment of this paper. Department of Labor. California, 6,773 pending cases as of January 13, 24, Employment Development Department State of California, 2024, Washi, Tennessee, backlog data unavailable Texas, backlog data unavailable Florida, backlog data unavailable Colorado, backlog data unavailable Alabama. Backlogs as of November 09th, 2023 are at a 3-year delay. Plotka, 2023, Nevada. 32,000 pending cases as of February 10, 2023, Haas, 2023, Michigan, backlog data unavailable. Wage claims. California Department of Industrial Relations. For workers who don't drop or settle their cases, the state averaged 505 days to decide an individual worker's wage claim. Data from 2017 to 2021 show. a violation of the 135 days maximum set by law. Kwong and Lazo, 2023. Department of Labor complaints against employers. Data for any Department of Labor complaints that are still unresolved is unavailable. Department of State. Backlog data unavailable. Department of Interior. Roads and other transportation assets account for $5.9 billion, about half of the NPS deferred maintenance backlog. U.S. Department of the Interior, 2018, deferred maintenance backlog for be unable to find recent and detailed backlog data for the Department of Interior. Department of Homeland Security. Backlog data unavailable. Department of Homeland Security. There is a significant amount of articles currently being published in the news regarding immigration courts in relation to the backlogs. They can be found in the references portion of this paper and also found easily using a search engine on the Internet. U.S. Government Accountability Office, 2023. Agencies received 928,353 requests last year and processed 878,420 requests, both record highs, according to the Justice Department's Office of Information Policy. Agencies were required to upload their fiscal 2022 annual FOIA reports by March 1st. Agencies will soon be posting their Chief FOIA Officer reports, which provide helpful context to the statistics reported in the annual FOIA reports and detail agencies' work in key areas of FOIA administration, the Justice Department office wrote in a blog. The Department of Homeland Security, which had pushed its backlog to a 10-year low in fiscal 2021, saw backlogged requests double in fiscal 2022 to 52,266 cases. DHS received more than 542,000 FOIA requests and processed more than 500,000 requests last year, setting new records for the agency, according to its annual FOIA report. Most FOIA requests at DHS are for people seeking their immigration records at Immigration and Customs Enforcement and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which saw 302,698 FOIA requests alone in fiscal 2022. In response to the surge in requests received in FY 2022, the DHS FOIA staff engaged in tremendous collaboration and coordination to provide strong customer service to the requester community, the DHS Privacy Office wrote in the annual report. ICE and USCIS continued an agreement that streamlined the experience for individuals seeking personal immigration-related files. Additionally, Secret Service staff stepped in to help USCIS with reviewing and closing backlogged files. The Justice Department also saw its FOIA backlog rise, from 49,959 requests at the end of fiscal 2021 to 64,982 requests after fiscal 2022, according to its report. DOJ received 93,370 requests in fiscal 2022, second most out of any agency after DHS. Meanwhile, the Defense Department's FOIA backlog increased slightly over the course of fiscal 2022, from 17,597 backlogged requests at the beginning for the year to 18,567 at the end. DoD received 54,004 requests and processed 52,222 requests over the course of the year, according to its annual report. The State Department's FOIA backlog took a jump in fiscal 2022 to 18,765 backlogged requests, up from 14,941 the year before. State received 13,864 requests in fiscal 2022, but processed only 9,167 requests over that time period. The National Archives and Records Administration, on the other hand, managed to keep its backlog steady despite receiving nearly double the amount of FOIA requests last year. NARA received 14,975 requests in fiscal 2022, up from 7,725 in fiscal 2021. But NARA's backlog stood at 9,969 requests at the end of fiscal 2022, 2 requests less than the previous year. NARA's FOIA staff managed to process 14,977 requests in fiscal 2022, more than double compared to the year before. Doubleday, 2023. Social Security Administration. The state of the backlogs at the Social Security Administration reflects a wait for benefits that could be up to 2 to 3 years as of October 2023. U.S.A. Institute of Politics, 2023. Equal Opportunity Commission. Gabrielle Martin, President of the National. Agencies or reports complaining about backlogs causing a lack of enforcement or fulfillment in their divisions. Department of Defense. Members of the United States military have been forced to live in abhorrent conditions, creating health problems for our service members prior to even seeing any form of combat. Multiple military barracks were found to have issues with mold and mildew, sewage overflow, broken windows and locks, lead-based paint, pest infestation, water quality, exposure to methane gas, and extreme temperatures. According to a report recently released by the United States Government Accountability Office, poor living conditions in military housing decrease quality of life for service members and their families and can negatively affect military readiness. Poor living conditions in military housing decrease quality of life for service members and their families and can negatively affect military readiness. This report did not include any data about a good handful of different military housings to include senior enlisted. In September 2023, we reported that some barracks pose serious health and safety risks and do not meet DoD standards for privacy and configuration, such as number of bedrooms. DoD does not comprehensively track barracks budget information. The report from the U.S.GAO titled Military Housing Strengthened Oversight Needed to Make and Sustain Improvements to Living Conditions puts blame on not enough money in the budget, lack of oversight, improper accounting practices, and absence of clearly defined standards as the reasons for the unhealthy living conditions at United States military barracks, United States Government Accountability Office, 2023. An article that was published in 2019 by NPR titled Shoddy Maintenance of Military Housing Under Scrutiny by Senate Military Leaders claims that these abhorrent conditions at military housing are also in relation to actions taken by Congress in 2019 in reducing budgets, Bowman, 2019. With that being said, this was all the way back in 2019. This matter was subject to public speculation and it is now 2024 and this still has yet to be resolved. According to NPR in a 2024 article titled U.S. Military Barracks Are in Shambles. Will the government take action? In October 2022, a Department of Public Works team spent 90 days on site inspecting and remediating more than 1,100 cases of mold. NPR, 2024. Those numbers are only from one location. I will conclude this in stating that my grandmother died because she got mold in her lungs where she was living and mold should be taken seriously. Food stamps/SNAP benefits. Black Small Square, Tennessee Department of Human Services has been denying people their food stamps/SNAP benefits. WTVC News Channel 9, 2023. Black Small Square, Georgia denying people their food stamps because of backlog. Boland, 2023. Black Small Square, Colorado denying food stamps because of backlog. Bryan, 2023. Black Small Square, New York. County offices as well as the state agency overseeing SNAP distribution attribute delays in providing benefits to the public on the pandemic. Employees blame wage disparity for troubles with employee retention, as New York Focus previously reported. Tens of thousands of New Yorkers who have applied for food stamps have had their benefits delayed for more than 30 days, in violation of federal law. Lubin, 2023. Complaints against healthcare providers, cites, 2023, Medicaid, Weiss, 2023. Black Small Square Hospital visits, Black Small Square Prescription Meds, Black Small Square Preventive Care, Black Small Square Maternity Care, Black Small Square Mental Health Services, Black Small Square Rehabilitation Services for people suffering from injuries. Black Small Square Long-Term Care includes people living in nursing homes and home-based care who have chronic illness or disability. ASO, San Francisco, California. Sturm, 2023. Milwaukee, Harris County, Virginia. VCU CNS, 2023. New York. Lucas, 2023. Rape kit backlogs across the nation are questionable, but clear data is unavailable. U.S.A. Facts Team, 2023. I've seen this mentioned a handful of times throughout the Department of Health and Human Services. The list of problems with food stamps not being available in various states is ongoing, and I do not have time to document this in its entirety. Department of Justice. News and have been unable to find solid data. This indicates that the processing of rape kit backlogs is likely also a part of this problem. Black Small Square Forensic as well as sexual assault DNA kits have not been getting tested. Some of these date back to the 1980s. Washington State Office of the Attorney General, 2023. Washington State is making an effort to resolve this, and the rest of the nation needs to follow suit. Wage claims, Black Small Square Cal Matters states. California's wage claim system is so backlogged it takes nearly 4 times longer than state law permits for the average case to reach a decision, according to a Cal Matters analysis of state data. Most workers drop or settle their claims before a hearing. Judgments are issued if a worker persists and wins. Kwan and Lazo, 2023. With that being said, if people are giving up on the legal system to resolve their problems, it means that justice is not being served, and those who are breaking the law are thus being encouraged to do so. Black Small Square, Alabama Department of Labor states, prior to the pandemic, ADOL, along with most labor agencies across the country, was already facing federal budget cuts due to the decades-old funding mechanisms set in place by Congress. The pandemic exacerbated those issues severely, and combined with a lack of staff and no real funding sources to hire permanent employees, the agency continues to experience delays. Plotka, 2023. Department of. I'm sure there's more, but for the sake of time, this gives an idea of what is going on with the Department of Health and Human Services. The impact this is having on society. Backlog data is not being openly published and made available to the public. There is a lack of transparency within our federal agencies and their subdivisions, and this should be an alarming cause for concern. It makes it very difficult to tell whether or not there is criminal activity within our agencies and if tax funds are being misappropriated or stolen. Below I am going to make some further examples as to why it is that the backlogs should be cause for concern. There are many different aspects of society that are currently being impacted by various divisions, and I will do what I can to try and break this down in a comprehensible manner. Some of this information may be from years prior to the pandemic, but serves as a clear example of the impact these backlogs are having. For scenarios where direct link to the pandemic is not addressed, data is still laying out to clearly give description to the impact the backlogs are having in their actual effects on victims and society as a whole. Disabled veterans are not getting their benefits is what this means. They are stuck in backlog and are not getting the help they need. If you reference the initial statement on the state of backlogs in this report, you will see that the backlog here is gradually increasing. It is not only the Department of Veterans Affairs that is having this problem, though. Not only are cases getting stuck in backlog, and the people with these cases are being left stuck with no help and no resolution in a variety of departments, to include the Department of Veterans Affairs. These scenarios are also spawning additional cases in additional departments in attempts to resolve. Overall, the situation is resulting in a lack of enforcement of the law due to ever-increasing backlogs on a variety of fronts, and overall resulting in a general lack of enforcement of the law. In the course of my research, I have seen everything from old ladies who need medical care because they broke a hip and need medical attention not get access to their Medicaid, to people who are on disability and are living in inpatient residential care, not be able to access their required public assistance for medical care, to people on disability not having access to their food stamps/SNAP benefits, and thus being made to find other means to get food or go hungry, to DNA samples for homicide and rape just being shelved and ignored. The government literally has DNA evidence to prove persons guilty of committing murder, and thus placing them in prison so they are no longer a threat to society, and has been ignoring these samples and simply allowing these people to continue with their daily lives and continue doing whatever evils they may be committing. This is a very large-scale and incredibly serious problem I am attempting to draw your attention to. It certainly appears to me to be a national security threat as well as a serious hazard to the well-being of all American citizens. The Securities and Exchange Commission, which investigates fraud cases, has been simply throwing out cases, which means that those engaging in fraud are allowed also to commit these acts. We may be also dealing with rampant environmental pollution and deliberate destruction of our lands as a result of these acts. I am blatantly stating in this letter that I believe our government is being dismantled, and I think the United States Congress is deliberately orchestrating this. My highest concern is the potential of foreign interference in this scenario. I am slightly concerned that the structure of the United States government is very prone in the fact that we have one office, Congress, in charge of almost the entirety of the United States. The United States Congress is in charge of overseeing these agencies, it creates the regulation of these agencies, and it also provides the funds, the structure of which I find to be a very obvious place to go if you would like to engage in fraud, acts of corruption for the gain of individuals, as well as it being an excellent place to target if you would like to, as a foreign entity, in intelligence operations dismantle a nation via its structure of law, as well as create such a national security threat as has been created. There are currently persons in prison being held in prisons throughout the United States without their fair right to a speedy trial, being held without being convicted. I don't feel I can properly express the severity of what I feel I am witnessing in the course of this research. I have incredible concern over what has been taking place at the South Texas border as a result of this, in combination with that, and this will be addressed further in this paper. I want to be clear in this as we proceed that readers understand this piece of writing is not something to be taken lightly. The lack of proper enforcement of labor laws has resulted in income disparities and many Americans living in deplorable conditions. The people who are doing illegal, harmful, and horrible things are thus made to win, and that is what this turns the country into. Quan and Lazo, 2023. Department of Veterans Affairs, VA. Disabled veterans are not getting their benefits is what this means. They are stuck in backlog and are not getting the help they need. If you reference the initial statement on the state of backlogs in this report, you will see that the backlog here is gradually increasing. Veterans have also not been able to access their military service records, as those have also been stuck in a state of backlog. Jon Ossoff, U.S. Senator for Georgia, 2023. Military members who have been in the military barracks with unsafe living conditions have also not been able to get the health care they need as a result of this. The Department of Justice. The Department of Justice enforces federal laws such as fraud, corruption, drug trafficking, cybercrime, civil rights violations, and more. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, created in 1957 by the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1957, works to uphold the civil and constitutional rights of all persons in the United States, particularly some of the most vulnerable members of our society. The division enforces federal statutes prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, and gender identity, disability, religion, familial status, national origin, and citizenship status. U.S. Department of Justice, 2024. Criminal Justice. As a result of the pandemic, the state of Milwaukee has seen increased criminal offenses, led by a huge increase in motor vehicle thefts, a decline in arrests by Milwaukee police that Henkin called precipitous, declining rates in how many criminal cases were being charged by the district attorney's office, and development of a large backlog of court cases. Borsuk, 2023, this is literally and in the most serious sense a huge public safety risk. Harris County criminal court backlogs are extensive and comparable to what can be seen to overall federal backlogs at certain agencies. As a result of being hit by a hurricane and then the pandemic shortly after, Harris County is struggling to manage its backlog. Sessions 2023. San Francisco, California. People are being held in jail for an extended period of time awaiting trial due to a lack of timely proceedings. People are losing their homes, their jobs, pets, all kinds of circumstances are being affected by people that are being held without the basic human right of a speedy trial. Kroll said in an interview that justice is being denied because the absence of trial deadlines without clear reasons gives the district attorney's office no motivation to settle a case. And a defendant's desperation may compel them to agree to a prosecutor's terms regardless of guilt or innocence. Despite the conditions in county jail, the stress of looming trials can lead defendants to choose jail, hoping for a faster resolution that would free them from strict restrictions, according to the Public Defender's Office. Both the police crackdown and the trial backlog are taking a disproportionately hard toll on the city's minority communities. The sheriff's office told the San Francisco Chronicle that of the 58 people arrested for breaking public intoxication or drug possession laws in the first week of the program, 25 were Latinos, 23 white, 9 black, and 1 American Indian. And while about 5.6% of San Francisco residents are black, more than half the people in San Francisco's jails whose speedy trial deadlines have passed are black, according to Raju Sturm, 2023. State of Virginia. The backlog of cases in Virginia's circuit court system worsened during the pandemic. Some people have been jailed for more than a year as they wait for their court date, according to records requested from several jails across the state. VCU CNS, 2023. New York. Last year, New York City jails reported their highest death rate in 25 years. Delays are causing the Dallas County Jail to be close to capacity, costing the county $87,000 every 2 weeks. Lucas, 2023. Rape kits. Failing to process rape kits results in sex offenders still being out on the streets hurting people and creating more victims, making America generally less safe for women. It also gives them an opportunity to flee prosecution. Immigration backlogs. The lack of appropriate governmental response to issues involving immigration has led to an increase of immigration-related lawsuits. Lahoude, 2022, therefore only backing up the system further and likely creating even more backlogs. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. EEOC was closing cases without investigating them to make up for a lack of resources. In 2018, 30% of EEOC cases were put into a low priority status. Only 13% of cases closed in 2018 ended with settlement or other relief or the workers who had filed the cases. Workers with discrimination cases will have to file a separate lawsuit which would be at their own expense and may not even be possible due to the financial situation of those filing complaints. This includes cases for workers with disabilities making complaints regarding discrimination over disability. Jamil, 2019. Social Security Administration backlogs. Securities and Exchange Commission. Department of Labor. Wage theft workers in California have not been able to get back pay owed to them for cases of wage theft as a result of the backlogs. The Department of Industrial Relations appears to be the entity acting as the Department of Labor when it comes to the issues workers face in regards to workers' rights. Only 1 in 7 employers issued court judgment in wage claim cases have paid their workers the full amount owed 5 years later to the workers. This statistic is from 2017. For workers who don't drop or settle their cases, the state averaged 505 days to decide an individual worker's wage claim. Data from 2017 to 2021 show a violation of the 135 days maximum set by law. Kwong and Lazo, 2023. Department of State. O Food Stamps/SNAP Benefits, WTVC News Channel 9, 2023, O Medicaid, Weiss, 2023, O. Department of Interior. Department of Homeland Security. Department of Health and Human Services. Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, backlogs. Kentucky, questionable activity. So long as these severely delinquent backlogs remain, the United States government remains in a shutdown status. How can we continue to spend so much tax revenue on engaging foreign wars and sacrificing our own citizenry to such wars, but yet continue to fail to serve the public and serve in the public's best interest in regards to making sure the American people have access to at least the most basic of amenities such as food and shelter? They really are just digging a grave for the United States in not addressing the backlogs. It's like digging a perpetuating hole that makes its own self bigger because failure to address issues, whatever they may be, from their root cause, is just spawning further legal actions that are worsening the backlogs and financial payouts and debts that would not have otherwise occurred. They really are just digging a grave for the United States in not addressing the backlogs. It's like digging a perpetuating hole that makes its own self bigger because failure to address issues, whatever they may be, from their root cause, is just spawning further legal actions that are worsening the backlogs and financial payouts and debts that would not have otherwise occurred. How accurate is the data being published as far as unemployment claims and workplace rights violations? Is it even up to date if the government is operating off of backlogs? The length of time that this madness resulting from the pandemic is creating systemic issues that should not and would not exist if we had a responsible government. State-managed agencies that engage cause for concern which have appeared during the course of this research. New York Office for the Aging. I found an article titled Lawmakers Voice Concerns Over Human Services Funding at Budget Hearing. This article talks about budgetary limitations causing a lack of access to food for the elderly as well as financial assistance for non-Medicaid home care as well as an agency that oversees adult care facilities. Lisa, 2024. Summary of Backlog Data Report. We are supposed to be in a time of economic recovery from this pandemic, and instead of helping the economy to force debts down the throats of Americans and worsen living conditions for millions of Americans through deliberate fraud and negligence. Also, in the course of my research I noticed that the majority of these articles I have been finding regarding people being negatively impacted in harmful ways by the state of the backlogs, particularly with the unemployment programs, happen to be women. Due to the fact that I am a woman, this has become a cause for concern to me. Upon further research I have found that there has been an economic crisis and a variety of problems regarding the treatment of women within all of this, which I will be sure to address later in this paper, and a good amount of that is going to be covered in the civil rights segment of this body of research. Other findings from this body of research that also raise concern. ERA should have been passed already. Crime rates. The United States does not monitor its crime rate. The crime rate statistics being published by the federal government is based on voluntary reporting. Metrics for our agencies are really being managed quite poorly. We don't know the national crime rate. We don't know where the money is going for some of the military barracks. The United States also does not know its suicide rate, as that information is hardly ever updated and way too much later to be effective in addressing current matters that may be affecting that statistic. Extensive FOIA backlogs should be considered the concealment of information. Multiple military divisions have been making the claim that lack of appropriate legal definition is the cause of their lack of ability to act appropriately. In a recent report by the United States GAO titled Federal Real Property, preliminary results show that increased telework and long-standing challenges led to underutilized federal buildings. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs, VA, states in general comments, while the report cites low utilization rates, it does not identify what the ideal utilization should be, how it should be measured, or whether there is a recommendation for a more consistent government-wide methodology for measuring. United States Government Accountability Office, 2023, page 25. This has also been happening with the military. Barracks which were recently exposed for poor accounting practices, with money not being accounted for in military members being forced to live in mold-infested barracks. It has been difficult to get up-to-date information on the state of the backlogs at our agencies. In this report there is still alarming statistical data regarding what has been taking place regardless of that fact. What we see in this data is a worsening situation that has been unfolding at our agencies. It is a result of the United States Congress denying funding to our federal agencies. In the past several months, the behavior I have witnessed coming from members of Congress as well as other MAGA politicians has given me great concern that the budgets are being abused as a political weapon. I think there is a good likelihood that these politicians may be directly tied to the millions of dollars of tax funds that have been going missing through these agencies. It is not a good thing that it has been made so difficult for the public to be able to monitor the status of our governmental body and the performance of our governmental body. A lot of this data ends with fiscal year 2022. I am very concerned that the state of the backlogs at our agencies from 2023 to 2024 may be much worse. Deliberately creating a situation where legal cases are simply getting thrown out due to a lack of ability to afford to uphold the law is obstruction of justice. I believe this is what our United States Congress has done. I believe there may be members of Congress who have been directly or indirectly receiving the funds that have been going missing through these agencies as a result of what is taking place with my own cases and accounts. There is further information in this piece of writing to include data of my own account within the government. I am unable to go into full depth at this time because Donald Trump just got inaugurated and is attempting to shut down our federal agencies, and I need to wrap up all this writing and make what I have publicly available at this time. I believe attempts to tamper with our agencies right now is an attempt to try and conceal evidence of a crime involving multiple co-conspirators working within the United States government. I apologize for the incomplete records. Information about civil rights. As reported by Pew Research in 2022, women earn 86% of what men earn based on median hourly earnings, FRY, 2022. Earnings gaps represent a prime reason why women, especially widows and divorced women or those who never married, experience higher rates of poverty in old age than men, Almeida and Salisbury, 2023. When checking to see where this information came from, as it is cited in the article I found it in, the cited source is a research document from the Congressional Research Service titled Poverty Among the Population Aged 65 and Older, Almeida and Salisbury, 2023. More women than men have been forced into being unemployed as a result of the pandemic. The decrease in the labor force participation rate for workers overall, from 63.3% to 61.3%, exceeds that seen in the Great Recession and ranks among the largest 12-month declines in the post-World War II era, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data. The rate for women had fallen as low as 54.4% in April 2020, and the rate for men had dipped to 65.9% in the same month. Hispanic and Black women accounted for much of the decrease in labor force participation among women. The net 2.4 million women who left the labor force from February 2020 to February 2021 included 582,000 Hispanic women and 511,000 Black women. Collectively, Hispanic and Black women accounted for 46% of the total decrease among women but represent less than one-third of the female labor force in the U.S. Kochar and Bennett, 2021. A recent poll by the Pew Research Center states half of American adult state women being treated differently by employers is one of the major reasons for the gender pay gap in the United States, Arrego, 2023. 20 million women were forced out of the workforce at the beginning of the pandemic, DeCamillo, 2023. That is roughly about 5% of the United States population and is roughly about 10% of the population of women in the United States. Occupational segregation, the clustering of women in just a few occupations, is a key reason for gender wage gaps. 21 helped cause the pandemic's disproportionate hit to women's employment, 22, and remains an obstacle to their recovery, especially for women without college degrees. Before the pandemic, nearly 6 in 10 women were employed in just 3 sectors that also were those hardest hit by the pandemic: education and health, leisure and hospitality, and retail and wholesale trade. 23-inch, Almeida and Salisbury, 2023. Time out of the labor force and reduced working hours have lifelong ramifications for women's economic security, from lost earnings today to smaller Social Security benefits and retirement savings down the road. Women's reduced labor supply also has growth, productivity, and international competitiveness ramifications for the whole economy. Almeida and Salisbury, 2023. My Life History, Short Autobiography. Short life history: the government tried to kill me. I have survived an incredibly difficult childhood. My mother is mentally disordered and was a violent person. My father, I am told, was an alcoholic and drug addict, and he beat my mother when she was pregnant. He was not a part of my life, nor was anyone from my father's side of the family involved in my life. I did not even know these people. My mother spent some time around people with addiction problems in my early childhood. In my adolescence, we moved in with a guy named Steve that my mom was in a relationship with. This part of my life was incredibly challenging. I was not allowed to have friends or allowed to socialize during this chapter of my life. My brother and I were often left at home alone. My mom and Steve would frequently leave us at home while they went out to eat or do other things, and we would have to try and figure out how to get food. We were living in the country when she was with this guy and often did not have food in the house. This house was in the middle of nowhere and there was a lack of legal jurisdiction in the area, so there wasn't much for police enforcement where we were living. I do not understand what was happening between those two, but I certainly don't feel I was wanted in that house. He would say things to my mom at night in the living room and I would stand by the door listening to it. I heard him say he didn't want me there often enough. I frequently got beaten by my mother on the nights when he would say these things. One particular night my mother strangled me unconscious. It happened because I had been on the patio on a clear night looking at the stars and pointed out to her how beautiful the stars were. I wanted her to see the stars too because the stars were very beautiful. As a result of this, I was violently beaten, strangled unconscious, and an ambulance was called. She was accusing me of being on drugs. This is what it was like living with my mother. This assault ended when she wrapped my own shirt so tight around my neck that I spat up foam and collapsed unconscious. She called an ambulance. I woke up and I was told to go change my clothes. I don't know what all happened with those paramedics after they showed up, but they took no action and left me there with her. For the record, I wasn't even a teenager yet when this happened and had no access or understanding of drugs. I was just a child who noticed the stars were beautiful and tried to share that with my mom. There was an indenture in the drywall in between the kitchen and main hallway that was shaped like my body in the fetal position from being beaten that I would stare at. Often on my way to my room. I was not allowed to have friends or any sort of a social life really. This is how my life was living with this woman. I developed a habit of running away from home sometimes when it was too much for me to handle. There were a handful of abandoned houses in the area, so sometimes I would seek to enter those to rest in a safe and quiet place for the night. I would jump out my window to get out of the house. One time I ran away and my mom found me and she threatened to run me over with her car and then charged the car at me. I can remember parts of my childhood sometimes. I remember one time we were all in a car and my mom's boyfriend Steve was driving. I don't know what made him so angry, but he let go of the steering wheel and tried climbing over the driver's seat to punch me in the back seat. My mom had to grab the steering wheel. I was put out on the side of the road in the middle of the country. Some guy found me who did not speak English and he seemed very concerned. He offered me a ride in the car, so I got in the vehicle. I got scared because we couldn't speak the same language and he didn't know how to help. He just kept asking me if I was hungry. I told him to let me out of the car because I realized I was in an unsafe situation. He didn't want to scare me worse, so he let me go on the side of the road. I walked probably at least 10 miles or something and wound up in some town. Walking these kinds of distances is something that I experienced multiple times as a result of the abuse and mistreatment I had to go through. One of my mom's favorite things to say to me was, "I brought you into this world and I can take you out of it." The only time I can really remember being treated like I was any sort of person by this lady is when I was like 5 years old. One time we had an actual conversation where we were both conversing back and forth. Sometime after I had already moved in with my grandmother, I visited with my mother. We were in her car and she told me she thought that Steve might be abusive and she was thinking about leaving this relationship. I was there for her when she needed to have someone who cares and give advice and all. I can say that I was never treated with that same level of regard during any of the time I'd spent with that woman in my life. At one point in time I had run away and was missing for a week or so. The police were seeking me out. I had taken up residence at a home that had other children in it where the mother was the only parent and would often leave these young children at home alone. I started to feel safe after a while of being there and decided now that my problems are gone I should try going back to school to get an education and believed that things would be better for me from this point on. I cut off all my hair and put a slash in my eyebrow and went back to school pretending I was a young boy because at the time I was too young to understand how school registries and all of that works. I was in middle school. Eventually I was brought to the office and there was a police officer there. I was left alone in the room with the police officer and this police officer proceeded to throw me into the walls yelling in my face. My homeroom teacher came to the room and said something along the lines of "That's enough of that." I can't remember his words. He persuaded them to allow me to go to my homeroom class while they sort this out. The other kids were on recess and the classroom was empty and he told me that he had to leave and not to get any ideas and left. Considering the circumstances, I bolted. I got halfway across town and was surrounded by police cars where they pulled their guns and said they would shoot and I was taken into custody. I cannot fully remember what took place after I was taken into custody after this incident and am incredibly concerned about what may have taken place. I cannot remember the period of time I spent at the facility they took me to. All I remember is when I was being released from this facility. I had been unconscious and woke up in what appeared to be a medical facility. I was in a room with a medical bed like what they have at urgent care and there was a bathroom attached to the room, a camera in the room, and for some reason I was in a hospital smock. I am still wondering why I was given injections before my departure. I have experienced a lot of trauma and this abuse at home ultimately resulted in me being in a coma so I cannot remember the entirety of my life and there are parts that are missing. I can say to an extent I am glad I can't remember a lot of things. There was a crack house next to the house my mom had us living at during this time. Drug deals were being made at this house and there were people frequently passing through that house. I would go over there to get food sometimes. They would feed me